and also for 16 years, right? They tortured the shit out of him. My uncle was 21 when he was killed in that war. So, and then I grew up in the was quote unquote sanctions, because the sanctions of UN was supposed to, after Saddam attacked Israel, obviously, it was the sanctions was supposed to stop Saddam from buying weapons. And that guy, Saddam, was taking advantage of that, of starving his own people so he can get the basically the political, like media, whatever, to say, oh, see, Americans, or because Saddam, when he used to say UN, he means the Americans. Like he's like, oh, the Americans control the UN. So that's why the UN's decided to put me in sanctions. So you like Iraqi people can starve. No, that was not the truth. I mean, the truth was to stop you from buying weapons because you attacked another country for no reason. So, like what I said, he was taking advantage of that to starve us. And I can assure you, if I show you pictures of Iraqis from that era, from the 90s, you would never see any fat person. You would never see any chubby person because everybody was starving. For real. Like, I'm being honest. Like, for, I don't know, 10, 15 years, that I had like probably 3 bananas my entire time back then, or like one Pepsi can. So the bottom line is we struggled a lot from dumb political decisions by our politicians, and we were fed up with war. You just like want to live in peace, just like any other country, and kind of like use your resources. I mean, we get it. All politicians are corrupt, but at least some of them do something to their communities. You know what I mean? So you got that type of way of thinking of people who just fed up with war with anybody, not just, America or Israel or any other country. We don't want war, even if they don't like us, even if they hate us. Like, I have no problem with people hating me as long as they don't show up at my door with guns and shit. You know what I mean? So it's like I'd be telling my people, you can hate anybody, that's fine, even though it's not a healthy way of living. But we don't need to go to war with countries that basically is not going to do anything good to this community, to this country, which is Iraq. So it's like we fed up with war, but on the other side, you have these idiots who believe everything that our Iraqi politicians say. So it's like we'd be like, man, don't you ever like get tired of doing the same thing over and over and end up on the same spot? Which it's your country is destroyed, your economy is messed up, and your people are struggling. So how does that, like make you feel? So that's why, like, when me or somebody else go like, oh man, just bomb everything and kill everybody, it's just like you get fed up to the point where like you just lose your shit. You know what I mean? Like, there's no way of making those idiots, which it's like a big portion of, unfortunately, of our society, who believe everything that the politicians say. And I'd be like, stop listening to a person and, just check their actions, see the results. I don't care what people say about whatever. I mean, look at the results, check the reality, and see like who's struggling more than the other. It's just the people who are struggling. So, but like what I said, if I said that to you in any of our conversations in the tower, or like what I said, probably it was one of those days. Like I'm fed up with it. Like, man, just let's kill everybody.
Yeah, that makes sense too, because you really were just fed up, and I probably too had to play with the environment we were in. I mean, being in the prison, working the prison, I had to play just a whole mental strain on you physically.
Yeah, I mean, like I used to see a lot of these detainees, which is, I can like assure you, like what I said, 99% of them were not innocent. Why? Because I can't remember how many times I had to ask detainees why they are here for, because the Americans would be interested in knowing. Because me, like when I translate, I mean, I probably remember, like, I don't really get involved when I translate in the conversation, in any conversation. I just translate back and forth, even though if I would be curious about knowing something. So anyway, I'd be asking this question for like so many different detainees. Why you are in here? The first thing they say, oh, I'm innocent. I was sleeping when they captured me. Well, no shit. Americans raid their houses at, early in the morning. So of course you were asleep. But what's funny is what they say after that. It's either they say, oh, they only found IEDs in my house. And I'm like, no shit. And what do you used to do with these IEDs? You know what I mean? Obviously, attack Americans or Iraqi forces. You don't kill flies with these IEDs, right? Or like they'd be like, one idiot went like, "Oh, I was innocent and this and that," and then he said, "Oh, what I had is just an RPG." I was like, "Bro, like it's an RPG." Like, so you can tell either because they are so like, I don't know, so stupid to the point where like they are admitting they were terrorists. You know what I mean? But you can tell they were not innocent. And even though they were treated right, they got fed up. I mean, like fed like really good food and like electricity running 24/7, which is something Iraqi people, Iraqi civilians don't have even till now. Like till this day, they don't have electricity running 24/7. Those detainees had clean water. They had the basically medical what do you call it, medical, like medics come and check them like every single day, you know and yet they are bitching and complaining about Americans not treating them right. I used to get furious when I hear them talk about that. I'd be like, this is bullshit. Like I would literally at some point I was like, can you give me one of these caravans to bring my family so at least we can spend the summer here, because the AC is running 24/7 the whole summer. And you know how hot it is over there. It gets to up to 125 degrees. So I'm like, these detainees, they are complaining about, the stuff that they didn't even have in their civilian war. And I had this conversation with one of the Navy guys that I used to work with. And he was like, well, I understand because it's because they are away from their families. I was like, first of all, I'm away from my family. You are away from your family. You don't see me walking around killing people with RPGs and IEDs. You know what I mean? And plus, not to mention, it's their fault in the first place because they associated themselves with bad people. Like this is me giving them the benefit of the doubt, not saying they are actually were like doing willingly shit that got them here in the first place. Because I have brothers and male cousins. None of them got arrested by any Americans, being in the wrong at the wrong, like place in the wrong time or whatever. I was like, so I know, you know what I mean? Like they did something to end up here, and yet they getting treated right, and they try to say like, oh, I'm mad because Americans got me here. No, you got yourself here. You know what I mean? And like what I said, like that Navy guy was like, well, he's trying to make it, like a excuse about like the way that they act. I was like, here's the deal. I will not walk with you. You can go and ask any detainees, because some of those detainees spoke little English. I was like, go ahead and ask them, what if the Americans leave Buka, which is the detention area that they used to be in, leave Buka, and then the Iraqi army takes over? How do you feel about that? He was like, oh, what are you trying to say? I was like, look, I know the answer, but I want you to go find out by yourself. I'm not going with you. I'm not gonna, get involved in translation in case if you think I changed anything the detainee would say, and you can pick any detainee who speak in English, and a lot of them spoke little English at least. So he walked up over there. I was watching him the whole time, and then 10 minutes later he came back. He was mind blown. He was like, man, I can't believe. And I'm talking about like we were in the red side of the of Buka, which is like all the bad extremists. You know what I mean? I'm not talking about the, like friendly detainees on the green side. So anyway, like he was like, man, I can't believe this. I was like, see, what did I say? He was like, I asked him, what if we leave and the Iraqi army takes over? He kind of like, stared at me and he didn't want to answer. So I felt like he didn't answer my question. So I repeated myself. And then he kind of like looked down, and then he looked at me, and then he pointed at me. He was like, no, you. I was like, see, they know if the Iraqi army takes over, they will not have, running water and electricity 24/7. They will not have any medical attention, and yet they calling you the bad guy. You know what I mean? So it's that stuff that I was fed up with, off of, like, the lies and the misconceptions and the propaganda that some politicians is trying to make people believe in.
It's
How do you compare that with what happened at Abu Ghraib? And what was your experience when that news broke? What were your feelings, and what was the energy like around where you were operating?
So, all right, like, before I say what I'm about to say, I'm not saying it's okay to treat people that way. Obviously, it's wrong. Anybody with any kind of, like, common sense would say that. But here's my thing before I answer that. The shit that Saddam used to do to his own people is way worse than that. You know what I'm saying? So for anybody to sit down and be like, "Oh my God, I can't believe they showed some naked guys being tortured." No, Saddam did way worse than this shit. And I can talk from an experience within my family. Like, one of my family, he used to be an Iraqi military pilot that hits targets in Iran and stuff. So he was like basically a high-ranking officer in the Iraqi army back then. He bought a house or some shit, and that house, like, the papers were, like, not legal or something. Anyway, he ended up in jail, right? He ended up in jail when Saddam was still in power, and he almost got executed just for that. You know what I mean? And the shit that he saw in the prison, in Abu Ghraib itself, ironically, he wasn't the same prison. Like, literally, here's a funny story. Like, my grandfather grew up a very religious person, right? One day he went to visit that guy, like, in prison, just to see how he's doing in Abu Ghraib. So, like what I said, my grandfather is innocent, didn't do anything wrong. He just went there for visitation to see his relative. He went over there, and the shit that he saw in the prison, as a person, as a civilian who's visiting somebody related to in the prison, when he left that prison, the first thing that he said, "There's no such thing as God." I was like, "Why are you saying this?" He was like, "If there is a God, Saddam would never stay in power. So God should, like, I don't know, do something about that, or kill Saddam or something, because of, like, the shit that they made him go through just to visit his relative. They leave you in the sun for like 4 hours, you know what I mean? Like, in a big yard. Basically, they make you struggle so hard to the point where, like, you'd be like, I'm an innocent person who's visiting somebody in a prison. So, like, why are they doing this to me? They doing it to you to the point where you get so scared. So when they make sure that when you leave home, you tell everybody how they treated you like shit just for visiting a prisoner. So you would never think about breaking the law. That's their logic. So the fact that, like what I said, the fact that somebody sits and be like, "Oh my God, I can't believe that," an Iraqi person, if an Iraqi person goes like, "Oh my God, I can't believe Americans." No, Saddam did way worse than that shit. And that doesn't justify what happened in Abu Ghraib, just to start with. So it's wrong. It's bad. I didn't like it when it happened, but I wasn't like, "Oh my God," you know what I mean? I was like, all right, if they will, get these guys who did that, like, in a prison, get them convicted. That's all. Like, what else you can do? Like, all right, it was, like, something bad happened by few, like, what, 5 people or whatever, and they got sent to court and they end up in prison. And the proof that they did that, we didn't see anything similar happen again. I mean, so, like, that was my reaction, honestly. And I know, like, a lot of Iraqis, they want, "Oh, like, see, this is what the Americans came for." No, it's just the media focused on that because it sells news, and obviously you can use it as a propaganda against Americans or whatever. But like what I said, the shit that happened in Iraqi prisons is way worse than that. Yeah, it doesn't just justify it, but that's how I felt about it, honestly. They got sent to prison, so that's it. They got what they deserve.
And I've just as a real, like, that's I don't even, man, that's deep. It's, but from just a little bit of my perspective on that as an MP who was on the ground when that was going down, just, I think it was more about who was doing it as opposed to what the accepted behavior before was. And the mission of the stated mission and how far that went against what it was that we were trying to do was off-putting is a really mild term, but it was shocking, and it was as somebody who was wearing the uniform in the San Bazaar, it was shameful. Right. And I don't feel as though there's any excuse for that. But man, I have to try to empathize with a culture where you grow up in, and then you see that type of treatment, and you're just like, could be worse.
Yeah.
I'm glad you're safe, dude.
What you've been sharing with us really correlate with the reality here in Israel, Palestine. And you talked about fear, that they tried in prison to put fear into people. I think that's the main thread in all of those behaviors. And also that the people that, the detainees that I only had an RPG or a few ideas, they grew up to reality that fear is something that you act accordingly.
Right.
And in systematic design, you have the circle of fear, you have the circle of love, and in some magical way, you were able during your journey to grab and act from the circle of love more than the circle of hate. In my little meeting with you and what you shared. Right. And I think that's a challenge when you have 1 or 2 TV channels. And it's a challenge when you have 500 ways of communication, like in our days.
Right.
As long as you consume information from the point that you are afraid, and that fear is what makes you tick, the circle will deteriorate, and violence will be a solution, a viable solution to resolve all kinds of situations. Right. And slowly, the fences you find, the separations we can find in society is more and more separated to smaller and smaller and smaller groups.
Right.
And the cooperation is becoming harder and harder. So to fix things is getting harder. And every time there's pain, violence, death in that, like you said, in your family, it's even harder to find the strength and the ability to see the love, to cherish life, to understand that maybe the way people describe God or worship him, like you said about your grandfather, is not the way that we define God as.
Right.
And I want to ask you about the detainees, because from my experience with the Palestinian population, I was needed to arrest and detain. There is so many stories, and I think big percentage of the people that go and bomb themselves or try to do it or involved in the change is people that were hurt during the road, during their journey, or their personal pain was exploited by all kind of unhealthy people. For one example, I was part of an operation to arrest 3 young suicide bombers, late girls, and I guarded one of them for a while before intelligence took her, and all she cared about was her missing her English exam the day follows, but she was supposed to be already into pieces while she was crying. We arrested her with the suicide vest.
Wow.
And so many times when we were operating in the territories to try and stop terrorists or people, violent people, it doesn't matter how we define them, people that choose violence,
Right.
we met the civil population, support them, defend them, hide them, and even take in some mental ill people, people with disabilities or all kind of autistic behaviors, put guns in their hand and send them towards us to have the pictures of the brutal conqueror. And it doesn't matter, it's something you met, those kind of behaviors, and something you found in your experience.
Mhm.
And how you engage it, how you.
Yeah. So you asked about the detainees. So, I think there's like 2 main different types of, like people who choose violence, let's call it, like how you did. Like some of them, they are really like, not really educated into like a basic level of education. And the reason why I say this, because I just, like I was thinking about like how we, as interpreters, we used to do kind of like a supply, like a, what they call, I forgot what they call it. It's like a form that we used to fill out when the detainees first come into Buka. And we asked them like their name, the city that they were born in, their ethnicity, their religion, if they were like Shias or not. Because at that, at the start, before I started working in Buka in 2006, I think before that, the Americans didn't do that. So they were just putting people like with detainees, like randomly put them with each other. And then after that, they start seeing issues. Oh, because he's from a different sector before. So they start to set up these questions in a way where for them to figure out like where to put this detainee and where to put the other ones. Anyway, I can assure you that, like every time we go to that place to do they call it the processing, to do the processing, there are at least like 300 detainees, and versus 5 or 6 interpreters who had to, fill out the forms for all these detainees. So me interacting with like at least, let's say 60 of them every time I go there, and most of them can distinguish between the definition of a city and a town in their own language. Like it's a very basic question. If you ask me where I was born, I'd be like, I was born in Baghdad. I will not mention the name of my neighborhood, believing that this is the name of the city. This is so dumb. You know what I mean? Like they be mentioning the name of their town. I'd be like, wait, what? We don't have a city in Iraq named that. They were like, no, it's next to that place. And they mention another village or another town. I'm like, oh my God, you can't even distinguish between a city and a town. So imagine that type of way of education, you know what I mean, that they had. So then there's no wonder people take advantage of them and kind of like use them. Oh, you need to blow up, kill, yourself and kill this guy and that guy, and you go to heaven. That's this type, and I believe it's the biggest portion of it. The second type of the detainees, the ones who really never got, for whatever reason, they never got interacted with anybody who's different from them. And I'm not necessarily mean like somebody from a different religion, even if from a different city, you know what I mean? They lived in the same village, same city, their whole life. They have dealt with nothing but people from their like same, religion, same way of thinking, same race, same everything. So it's like, even for them to hear somebody speaks in a different Arabic accent, they look at you like, look at this guy. You know what I mean? Like, so they never really got interacted with somebody who's different. So it's like in their eyes, everybody's their enemies. Like talking to them, like having a random conversation. Like you can't even like they don't know how to be friendly with anybody who's different. And by different, even though if you're same religion, but like you are from a different race, same religion, but you are like from a different city, so you have a different accent within the same country. So like they don't accept that. They just don't feel like, like I remember like they even have the detainees have a rule like inside their compound. Who sets these rules? Obviously the extremists. They'd be like, you are not allowed to interact or talk with anybody, not Americans, not the interpreters, without the presence of this guy or that guy. Somebody has to watch what they say and what they do so they don't get too friendly. Because once you get to know somebody and kind of like, how they say misery brings people together. So if you hear people complain about the same stuff that you complain about, you'd be like, oh, this guy just like me. He's a human being. He got feelings. He's missing his family. He doesn't like his government, this and that. So you start to see eye to eye with the other person. So you'd be like, why I'm killing you? You just like me, but you have a different perspective about a few things. You know what I mean? They don't want that. Like the extremists who were running like the place and the detainee side, they did not, like, they made sure of basically the detainees don't interact with anybody who's different, because like what I said, that's how they keep them blind. That's how they keep them in the dark and saying, oh, your life is going to be better if you kill this person or that person.
How old were you when you started working for coalition forces?
Yeah, I was 21 years old. Didn't finish my college yet at that point, because the Baghdad was miserable back then. Like it was a sectarian war going on, so I had to kind of like put my study on hold. And yeah, 21.
You said you did that for 7 years. Were you doing detainee ops the entire time, or were you going
No.
on mission with units and stuff?
So the first 2 years, from 2006 to 2008, I was working in Buka, and after I got threatened by my own uncle, one of my uncles. He wanted to take advantage of the fact that he knows that I worked as an interpreter at that time. So he was having an issue with my mother, and even though I never had any issue with him, like a personal issue, I never hurt anybody working as an interpreter, because a lot of Iraqis used to think, oh, you work as an interpreter, that means you're a snitch and you tell them who to arrest. They really literally believe that Americans would arrest anybody the interpreter would point at, even though that was not the truth. Nobody would arrest anybody just because I said so. You know what I mean? But anyway, he basically wanted to hurt my mother by, using the fact that he knows that I worked as an interpreter. So I pretty much I had to quit, left the job. But it's not like I told my POC at that point. I was like, I want to, especially, what happened is the general who was in charge of Buka, he decided to hire one of the detainees who was a painter, and his tent was next to our tent. I was like, are you fucking kidding me? Like, you're gonna hire a detainee? They're like, oh, well, General such and such thinks he's a nice guy. I was like, if he thinks he's a nice guy, maybe you should make him his roommate. So I was so pissed off. I grabbed my gear. I went to my PCO. I was like, I'm done. And she was like, why? I was like, you know what happened? You know why? That guy next door used to be a detainee, and now he hired him, and he's a painter. So he doesn't need to take a photo of our faces. He can just paint our faces, and that's it. His buddies will take care of it outside. So she was like, "Oh, well, maybe I'll move you to, Abu Ghraib or whatever." I was like, "No, why? Probably I will find, another, like a different painter who used to be a detainee and works over there." Anyway, I was mad. I left the job. Get back to study. I'm a chemist, so I went back to finish my study in college, and then I truly believed Iraq will, be a better place after, because when I left Buka, it was like 35,000 detainee over there. But like what I said, most of them were not innocent, you can tell. So I was like, oh, my country is going to be a better place if all those people behind bars. And apparently they start, by they, I mean the Iraqi government, start releasing all these detainees, especially the ones who just had IEDs or RPGs, and they kept the high profile ones because they knew that there are governments, whether Iran, Saudi Arabia, you name it, involved with supporting these high profile ones. So they kept them in Abu Ghraib, and like years later, they are magically escaped from Abu Ghraib, which is in the middle of nowhere. No, a fly cannot break out of that prison, right? About 400, 500 of them, escaped, and then ISIS was created a month later. Anyway, I decided to go back to be interpreter again in 2015. But this time was the job was different, because the job was to train the Iraqi forces to fight ISIS. So I worked with infantry, EOD guys, what else? Even medics. Yep. So the job was different in 2015, and I stayed in it all the way to I got laid off because of Corona.
So Corona brought you to the States?
Yeah, well, I got to the States, and I think, yeah, applied. Well, I applied to more than one different immigration program, and all of them take years. But the one that got me into here is the SIV, the Special Immigration Visa. And in order for you to apply for that program, you should have a letter from a general, which is it's almost impossible. But anyway, I was lucky enough to get that letter, and I end up here in America. I think by the 29th of September in 2001. Yeah, I made it here.
(2001)
Yep, 2000.
2020. 21.
21.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah,
Yeah.
21.
I was like, hey, bro. we
Yeah.
like we've been closer for longer.
Yeah.
Wow, what an arc. What a trajectory. What would you say is the most noticeable benefit or change that you were looking for or hoping for when you got stateside?
That's a good question. A lot of immigrants. Let me just talk about my people, because I don't know about others. A lot of Iraqi immigrants, when they come to America, especially if they get it so easy, not going through the same stuff that I went through, they were like, "Oh man, this is not what I thought about America. I'm going back to my country, such and such," and they keep complaining. Me, I was totally the opposite. I don't care what kind of sacrifice I would have to make, as long as I'm going to live in a country where people respect me, just because I'm a human being who wants to live in peace. And as long as they don't really bother me because of my belief or anything, I don't really care what kind of sacrifice. I don't really care what kind of job that I would be working in. Like my first 3-4 months here, I was just cutting trees, doing landscaping, because my paperwork took so long. I was like, I ain't gonna just sit here doing nothing. So people are like, "Oh, you want to do like some, clean up, this apartment or that?" I was like, I don't care. I would work in any job. So the greatest benefit, I believe, is the fact that being safe, and the fact that you feel like, you are protected, it's priceless. And a lot of people take advantage of that. They take it for granted, and they think it's just, oh, like, oh, my life is miserable because there's no sugar in my coffee. They start complaining about dumb shit to the point where, like, man, you don't know how bad other people got it. So the fact that you are safe, you don't have to look over your shoulder. It's like the greatest relief ever that I had. Like, as soon as, we landed in New York, I was like, man, I'm home. That's how I felt. You know what I mean? Because I feel like I'm living with people that I can, live with in peace. Even if somebody doesn't like me, that's fine. I don't really, care about making people liking me, as long as I'm not doing anything wrong, as long as I'm not breaking the law. People like not gonna mess with you. You know what I mean? Like, that's what I love about this country. You're safe, you're protected, you have rights. Yeah, maybe it's not perfect rights. Maybe, there's a lot of things can be improved. I totally believe in that. But, they say that there's a saying, I don't know who said it, but they say, I used to complain about my shoes till I met a man with no feet. You know what I mean? So it's like, when you see people complain about, like, oh, they closed this lane because they are, paving it or whatever, I'm like, hey, they are improving your city. Like, what are you complaining about? At least like, I literally heard because I work as a teacher now, I heard one of the students, I was like, oh, I hate the stairs. I was like, be grateful you have stairs, Seriously. Yeah.
Think that proportions is a big thing, and perspective. What you said about shoes and legs, it's kind of, you did the opposite way. You grew up, you grew your legs in a way. So you let yourself feel it. And how is it to be a teacher? How is the experience to be a teacher in a new country?
I was kind of like nervous at the beginning, even though I did work as a teacher as well in Iraq. I did teach for a few years. I taught chemistry. And over there, it's a nightmare. Like, it's just because the lead, like, there's too many problems. But, like, just to start with, you have at least like 50 students in each classroom. It's disgusting. You know what I mean? It's miserable. So when I started working here as a teacher, I was like, probably it's gonna be like, of course, I felt like it's gonna be easier, but I was nervous at the same time because I was like, how I'm gonna, communicate with these guys, not in language wise, but like, I don't know how to joke with them. I don't know, like, oh, what I joked with is soldiers and adults. You know what I mean? Like, people who can that you can swear in front of and talk shit. You know what I mean? But dealing with teenagers who are from a different country, I was like, kind of like nervous at the beginning. But honestly, I love it. It's, I don't know, so nice. The students are more interested in listening to me than other teachers. I think because the first week or whatever, you have to introduce yourself, talk about yourself a little bit. So the fact that they saw how, I gave them like a little bit of stories here and there about some of the stuff that I've witnessed coming from a different country. So they were really interested. They were like, really, they loved listening to me. I never had any issue with any student, to be honest. It's way easier than, being a teacher and where I come from. And I just love it. Like, and not to mention the pay is really good compared to to what it used to be in Iraq. So you make good money, you make good friends. People are nice. Their parents, they really appreciate you. Yeah, one of my students, her parent is used to be a veteran as well. Like, we had some good conversations and good, relationships. So I love it, to be honest.
Have you?
I have to apologize. My wife live in the home and I need to take care of my aunt.
Sure.
Little boy. I have to apologize. And I'll see you next time. And thank you for being so open and honest and authentic, and I'm looking forward for our next sesh.
Thank you so much. Have a good day. Thank you.
Thank you.
Later, dude. All right.
I know.
So, hard questions now.
Yeah, go for it.
Food.
Yeah.
What do you miss? And what are you just like really grateful that you've been introduced to now? What's your favorite food that you left that you wish that you had, or if you found a place that serves it that you really like? And then what's your new favorite food since you've been in the States?
Well, probably, I'm glad you asked, because probably that's the only thing that I miss about Iraq is the food, I mean, no offense. And when people say no offense, they're gonna say offensive shit. Americans can't cook for shit. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. So it's like now when I cook some food here, and I take it with me to the school and have other teachers try it, they be like, "Oh my god, this is so good!" I'm like, "Yeah, you motherfuckers don't know how to cook," So, but like, like I don't know. Honestly, here I love the variety of cheese that Americans have, because we don't really have it there. And but as far as like the food, yeah, I'm struggling a little bit of finding, like, we call it halal meat, which is like kosher basically. But there's a few places here that you can order stuff and they get it for you. My favorite, food in Iraq is, I would say, like a smoked fish. I'm addicted to fish, which is not really a big a problem here. You can get, honestly, I was surprised that a lot of places here in America, when you go and ask them for like a whole fish, they look at you like, what? There's no such thing as, we don't sell whole fish. And I'm like, why? It's all like, cut up, and kind of like the meat is kind of dealt with some chemicals to get rid of the bones and the stuff. So it loses a lot of its flavor. But there's still, I can go to, like somebody and be like, hey, whenever you go fishing and you catch a good one, I'm paying for you. Because we like to kind of like grill the whole thing after you, cut it flat open, and then you clean it from the inside, and you make sure you grill it. Use like some kind of like spices before like you smoke the fish. So yeah, food is definitely the only thing that I miss about that place. But working on it, you know what I mean? Like, it's not
I
really,
gotta
yeah.
I gotta say the fish brings an upset stomach. And the only reason I'm saying this is because when the second time I was over there, our IPs ended up buying us some fish in Mamadiya area.
Mhm.
And I'd never had the worst diarrhea than I had after eating that fish. But I must say though, I do really miss the chicken. The chicken I had over there that was cooked on the side of the road was absolutely amazing.
Yeah, man.
It was cool though. After the time that you and I spent together, then having the experience I had shortly after, to where, training Iraqi police officers,
Right.
I actually got to then interact with the local communities. And I think, honestly, it might have had a lot to do with the relationship that you and I built together, that I was able to see the country a little differently.
Right.
And in some ways it might have hurt me more morally and emotionally, but at the same time too, I think it gave me a really good perspective in being able to maintain and hold on to a lot of that humanity that I needed to hold on to not lose myself in the environment.
Right.
So
Yeah.
how has it been for your family transition?
Well, I mean, to be honest, they like what I said, that even though they haven't been through the same stuff that I've been through, because most of the time I would not share, the things that I witness working as an interpreter, whatever. But overall, like they are really grateful that they end up here, because like what I said, it's just the fact that you're safe, and like you don't have to worry about like gunshots or anything. Like over there, I can remember for years, not a day goes by in Baghdad that you don't hear gunshots, and you don't know if it's somebody having a wedding and partying, or somebody's killing someone or trying to shoot somebody. Like you don't know, like,
Right.
and even the police over there, they don't really care about, like, if you fire your weapon, as long as they don't see it. So anyway, like the fact that you're safe, it's a big thing, and they are really, like grateful for it. The language wise, like it wasn't really like a big struggle, because you know how kids can adapt really fast to learning new things. So that was, new experience for them, but they are loving it as well. We try to speak nothing but Arabic inside the house, so they don't forget their first language. You know what I mean? But yeah, it's been amazing, man. I can't tell you how happy I am. Every time I look at them, I see them, how they build more confidence and kind of like go out there and experience the world. It's just amazing.
Are you so in this transition? Like, first, I really love how you learn English, by the way, and I hope you're able to touch on that a bit more. And then I'd like to find out, since then, right, if you have been turned on to any new artists now that you're stateside, and your access is a bit different to
Yeah.
different record stores or whatever, different genres and whatnot, especially being there on the East Coast.
Yeah.
But then also going back to fishing,
Mm.
right? A lot of veterans have fishing groups all over the country, fly fishing, all that stuff. Um, you're you're pretty
You're
much
one of
like,
us.
yeah, you're pretty much adopted anyway. So, uh, I mean, that might be a good source of fresh fish and camaraderie. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, talking about how I learned the English language, uh, like in Iraq, they make us basically study the English language in the school. Like it's not a choice; you have to. It's mandatory. But they don't really teach you how to speak. Like they end up teaching you a lot of grammar, how to spell words and stuff. But that you don't really practice your speaking skill. Not just because there's nobody to practice with, but they don't even bother to take the time and make you actually practice your English, whether with the teacher or with your friends at the class. So nobody even bothered like to focus on that. They all like want to pass. Students, they just want to pass the exam, so they just focus on the stuff that they have to study, which it's grammar and knowing how to spell words, and that's it. But me, since I was a kid, since I was like 10 years old, I always wanted to, like, I used to watch my dad watches Western movies, like cowboy movies and stuff. And I was like, man, I wish I can understand what they are saying without reading the subtitles. You know what I mean? And at that age, I thought it's impossible. I was like, there's no way in hell for me to understand what they are saying without subtitles. You know what I mean? Then when I turned 14, I started doing martial arts. And a friend of mine was like, who did not speak any English. He was like, hey man, maybe you should listen to, some of these American music to kind of like when you work out or whatever. So I started listening, and I was just, working out, listening to these music without, understanding what the hell I'm listening to. And back then, because there was no internet, no nothing, so it was so hard to get a hold of any American music. you know. So I was just listening to the same cassette over and over every time I work out. So it's like a year or two later, I was like, man, now I can actually pronounce some of these phrases, not just words that I hear on the music, like this one or that one. It's basically, I realized later on that the more you listen to a language, if you already know the basics, obviously, the more that you listen to a language, the better you will speak it. You know the saying that they say good speakers are good listeners. So, and that's how I was able to actually speak, English, especially when I went to college. I felt like everybody going to be interested in that, because even though I studied chemistry, you had to know a little bit of English, but like what I said, you didn't need to speak English. So I felt like other students would be interested. So every time I'd be trying to speak to somebody, an Iraqi person, obviously, this is in 2002, so before Americans came in, they'd be like, the students be looking at me like, what are you saying? I don't understand what he's saying. You know what I mean? Like replying in Arabic. I was like, I had to break down what I say. So I was kind of like disappointed because I didn't find anybody to practice with. But then in 2003, when you start seeing American troops on the street, and if they stop you on a checkpoint, it's funny how like most of the time they didn't have an interpreter. And if they had an interpreter, my English at that time was better than his English. So I'd be like, hey man, you wanna work as an interpreter? And honestly, I wasn't like against it. I was just, not knowing where to go or like how to do it, or like, you know what I mean? But I wanted to work with them so bad because like, man, if I work with these guys, I'm gonna get to practice my English every single day. And on top of that, you get paid to do it. You know what I mean? I even remember one time they stopped us at this checkpoint, and I had my dad was driving. I was in the passenger seat. My dad was so nervous. He knows a little bit of English, but he gets nervous all of the time, even though, he didn't even have a gun his whole life. It's not like he was doing anything shady, but he was just nervous, talking to, people from a different country. I was not. I was just relaxed. So they decided to, make us step out of the car, search the car, whatever. That's what a checkpoint does, obviously. And then one of them, he was like, hey, do you speak English? I was like, yeah. And I had a t-shirt that it says NY on it. So it was like, well, how did you learn how to speak English? And I grabbed the cassette. It was a 50 Cent Get Rich or Die Trying album. I was like, I just, hold the cassette and I was like this. He was like, he was, mind blowing. And he looked at his friend. He was like, this guy listens to 50 Cent. Yeah, like it was funny to see his reaction. Yeah, I mean, as far as your question about if I got, like to be introduced to a different artist or whatever. I mean, I don't know. I'm an old school rap music fan. So, my favorite rapper is Tupac. I listen to Biggie. You know, most of my artists from the West Coast, but I end up on the East Coast.
How about that? We grew up listening to the same stuff, man.
Yeah.
That's dope. You hey, how about oldies? What do you think about oldies though? It's probably a bridge too far, but like Art Laboe or and then yeah, I'm just next song. Never mind. Kowalski, what's up?
Oh, I'm baffled, and I'm learning a lot of new things. I didn't realize that when you and I met, it was so early in your career.
Yeah.
Like 2007. You're only a couple years older than I am.
Yeah.
Kowalski, you were one of the dudes he was practicing with, and you didn't know. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember people asking me like, "How do you like being an interpreter?" I was like, "Bro, I'm just talking. I'm getting paid." So that's literally all that he did.
Yo, that's a 50 Cent lyric if I've ever heard one, man. Like,
Right.
bro, I'm just talking. I'm getting...
No, he says I can sell record by breathing or something like that. Like,
I'm saying, You just channeled the fuck out of it.
Hey, when 50 Cent watches this later,
Right.
make sure he recognizes that he got a huge fan that he needs to link up with on the East Coast.
You need to get it to Yayo first.
I like Tony Yayo. He's a very loyal friend of 50.
Right. We need to hit up Yayo first, like, sir. You just got name dropped by just heads up.
Right.
And then see what happens. Just nothing, no expectations. What up?
Right. That's cool.
That really is awesome, man.
Thank you.
I still have the gift that you brought back from one of your R&R trips.
Yeah.
From 2007. I don't know if you remember.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, you brought me a sleeve with all the old money and new money in it.
Yeah. Nice. Yeah, I just wanted, like, I used to feel bad for you guys, like not just you, all the troops that I served with, because you didn't really get to. Maybe you did for like a little bit, but you didn't really get to see the beautiful side of the country and the culture. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You were just inside the wire, and kind of like, even though if you had to go outside, you had to be in full battle and kind of like, rolling Humvees and shit. It's not like you out there as a civilian enjoying whatever is possible to enjoy if it's safe. You know what I mean? So that's why I just wanted to give you kind of like a different side of the story. Be like, yeah, it's a country that's been through a lot and a lot of crisis, but also there's other like beautiful part. And a lot of Iraqi, even though I don't really listen to Arabic rap music, but a lot of rappers, like Iraqi rappers, they always try to show that part too, which is the part where people are just interested in kind of like living and showing their culture and be friendly with people no matter where they come from. There's that side too, even though it's not really not too much light shed on it. So that's why I just kind of like you or other people wanted to introduce it to some stuff, be like, hey, not everything is bad over there. Yeah, a lot of bad things, but there are some good things as well. But unfortunately, you didn't get to experience it.
Well, as an MP, in 2004, 2005 is when I was down, boots on the ground over there in Baghdad and all over, right?
Right.
But then we got dinged up a bit, and about 3/4 of the way into our tour, they put us down south working with the highway patrol down there in Basra, Nasiriyah. And we got to check out, so like the Temple of Ur,
right?
Then Father Abraham's house,
nice,
and the royal tombs before it was like all blocked off to everybody.
Right.
Later on, so I got a lot of really cool pictures from that spot. A lot of really good memories from that spot that are different from like just the madness that was going down in Baghdad at that time. And I'm personally grateful for that because it did allow me to sit with my thoughts and to reflect on other people who had been in that same space and all the different things that they had experienced, right?
Mm-hmm.
And to just reflect on my little piece there during that one brief moment in time, right? Knowing that it was coming to an end, my time in that place. So I would have loved to be able to have seen more. The history is fascinating.
Right.
I wish we talked about that more in the media. The culture. I'm glad to hear that the youth and subsequent generations are making it known, right? What they want known about themselves
Mhm.
and their history, right? I think that's powerful and reinforcing in a positive way. And music's a particular and specifically a unifier.
Yep.
Get together around a beat, and all of a sudden somebody starts mumbling something.
Yep, that's pretty much what it is.
Can we keep a rhythm, right? Can we go in tune?
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden people are doing the flamenco and shit. But do you dancing? Do you Iraq's big on dancing? That's big around your guys' celebrations and stuff like that. You like to dance?
Well, yeah. I mean, my people are crazy about dancing. Like they can dance pretty much to any beat. I'm not really a big fan of dancing, but sometimes you get forced to, because if you are in a wedding and you don't dance, that means you are not being respectful to the person who's, to the bride or whatever. And I'm like, all right, whatever, let's dance. You know what I mean? So yeah, dancing is a big thing. And I like what you said. Music, it's like one of the greatest ways to express the culture of the people, or even especially rap music, in my opinion. Not because I'm just a fan of it. It's just like if you're a good storyteller, you can really like talk about a lot of issues and kind of like address it, and you never know who's gonna hear it, and especially now, even if you rap in Arabic, they make like a good like subtitles, like with a kind of like precise translation for the lyrics, so you can kind of like still understand what the artist is talking about. So it's a way of putting your thoughts, your perspective out there to the people, where can actually kind of like understand what you trying to, what kind of issue you're trying to address. So that's why I love the music, because it's a way of communicating as well.
Yeah, man. I mean, who doesn't? I have to admit, being from a Hispanic family, that I have been forced to dance a lot myself in quinceañeras and all kinds of stuff, right?
Yeah.
But I'd be lying if I said I didn't enjoy it. You get some Latin beats going, and all of a sudden I'm like, okay, what's going on? It's just, I don't know. Normally I am reserved, and I'm not looking for the dance floor. That's like the last thing I want. But I don't know, man. Something about like group think and that activity. It's just like everybody else is doing it, and then you start to enjoy it, and before long, you're like, holy shit, it's been an hour. I want to go home.
You're right.
You
I gotta
start-
wake up early in the morning. Yeah.
Yeah, what did Cat Williams say? You start to feel like you're kidnapped. Like, damn, like after the third day, it's like, can I just leave? Yeah, that's fun.
Oh, that's great. So Rico's dealing with some heat issues there, D. And any tips and tricks that you could teach him or give him on?
Yeah, hardy har. You heard the man say it was like 125 degrees where he's from. It's only gotten up to like 114,
Yeah.
15. It's not even, we're not there yet.
Yeah.
We're not there
Getting
yet.
close.
I'm good. Thank you. Thank
Yeah.
you, Robert. Wow. He's like, hi. Hi during the day. And, fans are good. Fans plus water better. App or AC, find an energy near you, and then just sleep. and then hybrid activity, so night owl-ish behaviors.
Yep.
So what as a chemist, dude, what when you started what brought you, what was it that drew you to that field? That's not I don't see that. Maybe it's not the way my brain works. Like, I want to be a fucking chemist, dude. what drew you to that profession? What was interesting about it, or intriguing, that you wanted to study it?
Honestly, like, okay, so the way that, like, education system work over there in Iraq is different than what it is in America. Over there, if you want to study anything you want to without worrying about your grades in your senior year, you got to go to private college, which is you pay money. And because I come from a poor family and I didn't want to cost my parents any money, and I didn't have any money myself to go to a college that I wanted to. So my thought was like, oh, let me just do my best in my senior year so I can get the best grades. Because when you get good grades in your senior year, you can get a lot of options, different options to go different public college where you don't really pay money. So I didn't really want it to study chemistry, to be honest, in the first place. I wanted to be, study anything that has to do with English or computers. That's what I wanted to. But my dad wanted me to be an engineer because that's how it is for people from the Middle East. Your parents want you to be either a doctor or an engineer. If you're anything less than that, you're a stupid and you didn't make your parents proud, basically. So anyway, we were having this conversation, me and my dad. I was like, I don't want to, like, anyway, I was like, no, you apply to be an engineer if they accept you. Because like what I said, if you apply for a public college, then they look at your grade and decide. So I didn't get accepted to be an engineer. I got accepted in a College of Science, and the departments that they have in that college is computer, biology, chemistry, and geology. I was like, computers. He was like, oh, all right. Well, I don't care. I applied for that. I didn't get accepted for that department. They were like, either you go biology or chemistry. I was like, fuck that shit. I'll study chemistry. So I decided to study chemistry, and not because I loved it or anything. And honestly kind of like regret that because it's really hard and it's really not what I wanted. But anyway, I ended up, doing it because, like what I said, I didn't want to pay money or whatever. And I got, like, I got to be a chemist, I guess. So, yeah.
I mean, there's worse things. I can think of a lot of worse things. And over here, it's like, wow, that dude's like, he's fucking off the wop. Just went like, nah, fuck it. It's a chemistry. Yeah. All right. And,
Well, that's just my attitude. You know what I mean? When people are like,
yeah, but
oh,
you gotta be smart to do that. Like, it's like over here, I'm like, yo, if I even just was like, yeah, all right, chemistry, I would make it maybe like a week into the coursework. Hey, I'm just gonna clean toilets. Yeah? How do I study to be a janitor? What the fuck? You guys need
no,
to
honestly,
clean.
yeah.
I wanna be able to finish chemistry school. Like that's an achievement, dude.
Thank you.
It's a demonstration of flexibility for sure. And being able to just adjust and okay, we're studying this now and go forward with it and complete your tasks.
Well,
But,
to be
You got
honest,
one hell of a work ethic.
yeah,
yeah,
the way that I was raised, honestly, like, my dad didn't really give us that many options. It's like either you do it or I make you do it. You know what I mean? And in so many levels. So it's like you better behave. You better be, especially being the eldest. Like if any one of my brothers does something stupid, then it's my fault. And I'd be like, I'm only like a few years older than him. And he goes like, no, you're the eldest. You're supposed to lead them. You're supposed to be. You know what I mean? Like that was his attitude of raising us. Like and every time we complain, like even a little bit, not to him, to my mother, be like, oh, you bunch of pussies. You this. It's like we always not good enough. You know what I mean? So the fact that you're pushing yourself, you're trying to improve yourself, you're trying to make him happy, but at the same time, he's always pushing you to do even more. You know what I mean? And so that's like, it was no big deal. It was like, hey, what other options I have? I have to, do it because that's the only option available for this family, which is they want to spend less money because they have so many, siblings to take care of and things like that. So that was the attitude.
Did you follow through with? I could totally relate and empathize with how it is that you like that family interaction. By the way, wow. That could have been in any American home. By the way, friend.
Yeah.
Did you continue on then once you did have a choice, or did you just go with your credentials into your teaching career essentially? Then did you follow that into teaching others chemistry?
Well, honestly, after I graduated from College of Science, the chemistry level that we study over there is so complicated to the fact that when I looked at the stuff that they teach in school, like high school, I was like, man, this is a joke. This is not even chemistry. This is something that looks like chemistry. You know what I mean? So I was like, this is so easy. I can do it. And I also wanted to kind of like make it easier on the students. It's like I'm gonna do my best to make these students, if not love what they study, at least see it not complicated as much as what it is. You know what I mean? So that's why I wanted kind of like, be a teacher and kind of like just I felt for the students. I felt for the fact that some of them might not have the option, just like me, they didn't have the option to do other things or like, do different things. So like the least that I can do is just make it a little bit easier on them.
That's what's up.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
All right, I'm sorry, but I have to leave.
Yeah, no, man, this has been great, dude. You're awesome.